The loss of a loved one can leave you feeling depressed, angry, alone, lost. But you don't have to face this journey on your own. Open to Hope is a free community for anyone who has experienced loss. Find support. Find help. Find hope. Give grief a voice at opentohope.com.
Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
This show is brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation as well as in partnership with the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, we have got a great show today, and it's going to be on dealing with loss, and we have a wonderful family to talk about the dynamics of having a loss when you are in a family.
Absolutely, and this is the Ferber Jordon family, and I know Jordon Ferber very well. I met him at Compassionate Friends, and he's going to be here today with his parents. And we're going to interview his parents first, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. They're a wonderful family. They are the founders of the Russell Ferber Foundation, and this is a foundation dedicated to their son and brother Russell, who died in a car accident when he was in his early 20s. And we're going to talk with Dorothy, and Dorothy Jordon is mom. She's the mom, and she's a travel writer. And she was the chapter leader for the Compassionate Friends here in Manhattan from 2004 to 2008. So we'll speak with her, and then we'll speak with her husband, whose name is David. And David is a lawyer, and he also founded the Russell Ferber Foundation. And he also facilitates men's groups, Mom, at Compassionate Friends. Yeah, so he can kind of shed some light on men and grief and what the differences are between men and women's grief. And then that we're going to be joined by their son, Jordon. And like I said, he's a great friend of mine. Yes. And I met Jordon at Compassionate Friends. Jordon is a very funny comedian. He does a podcast called Where's the Grief? So that's a radio podcast weekly. And he facilitates sibling groups at the Compassionate Friends in the Manhattan chapter.
All right. Well,
So,
it sounds
yeah.
like we're going to have a great and full show. Well, welcome to our show today.
Well, thank
Hi,
you. It's
Dorothy
nice
and
to be here.
David.
So great to have you guys on. Well, who wants to start? Do you want to tell us a little bit
Dorothy
about
always.
your son, Dorothy?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know, I had two sons, and they were 3 years apart in age, and they were about as different. They were like night and day. And Russell was a child who was sort of always in your face. We always thought Jordon was shy. So for those of you who know him as an adult, and you know that he's not at all shy, we think he was only shy because his brother was so brash. So they were 3 years apart in age and 2 years apart in school, so they had many of the same friends, but they had completely different skills. I used to say that Russell was a very competitive young man. He always wanted to be the best. He wanted to be the first. Everything that was very important to him. His brother didn't have a competitive bone in his body, so they were very lucky in that respect, and we were lucky in that respect. Russell grew up. Had a learner.
Now, you're down in Greenwich Village.
We've been in the village, yes.
Yeah.
Russell turned out to have a lot of learning disabilities, which we didn't discover until like the 6th grade. And he had trouble reading, he had trouble with writing, so he ended up becoming a chef, which I've discovered recently that there are a lot of chefs who have learning differences because it's you don't need to always read so much, you know.
And very creative.
And it's
Well,
very
that's
creative.
what I was thinking. You see, you know, my husband and my son have learning differences also, and you see that they have this whole creative side to them when they have that. So that makes sense that he would do something very creative.
Yeah, but Jordon is the most creative, I think.
Yeah,
you know.
he's funny.
So Russell went to the Culinary Institute.
He was
in upstate
at
New
the
York.
CIA when he was on his break, and David and I went away for the weekend, and
Jordon was away.
And Jordon was away. He was in Florida with a group of friends, and we went away for the weekend. And I remember David said, "Let's call the boys." I said, "You know, we pester the heck out of them. We talk to them every day. Let's give them a day without us." And so we did. And the next day we went into Rutland in Vermont, where we actually had phone service. We both called Russell's phone and Jordon's phone. We didn't get Jordon, but a policeman answered the phone when David called. And you want to pick it up there?
Yeah.
Actually, a policeman didn't pick it up, but he had Russell's cell phone. And the message came up, "Dad." That was the way my cell phone number was recorded by Russell in his phone. And so the detective who had the phone then dialed back and asked me a whole host of questions after introducing himself as a policeman
Yeah.
to confirm that I was, in fact, Russell's
Right.
dad. And then he dropped the bomb on me
Oh my gosh. on
after
the
he was
phone.
confident.
Wow.
We were in a parking lot. Dorothy had just gotten out to go
We were about to go get ice cream at
to
Friendly's.
go. We were at a
you
Friendly's,
never
Friendly's
forget
ice
that
cream
moment.
place
Yeah.
in Rutland.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll call you back.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't recall very well the
Yeah.
next few minutes. I think a lot of the normal range
Right.
of screaming and crying and hugging once
Absolutely.
Dorothy and I got physically together occurred.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, incredible. So fast forward, you guys got involved in the Compassionate Friends?
Well, you know, we came home, and I had a sister who lost a child. Her son was 7.5 when he died.
Wow.
And everybody said,
How
oh, you
long had that been?
It had been 29 years,
Okay.
but the same week, interestingly
God.
enough.
Wow.
And everybody said to me, oh, your sister's going to be able to help you. I took one look in my sister's eyes and all that pain. You know, she didn't have a Compassionate Friends to go to, so she really didn't necessarily deal with it in the same way that we ended up dealing with it. And so you know, everything you sort of read about grief, you find the Compassionate Friends. So I called. It was 2.5 weeks after Russell died, not even. And she said it might be too early, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what
Right,
to do.
right.
So anything, I was willing to try anything because I just felt like I had been socked in the stomach, and I hadn't stood up yet. I wasn't
Right.
standing. So David came with me to be supportive.
Now, David, okay, I like to hear that you came to be supportive,
I was a
because one of
skeptic.
the things we find
All the
is
time.
how do you get the guys?
Yeah. I guess that's a classic. I was certainly a skeptic, but I wanted to support Dorothy, and I had nothing else in my mind about all I kept seeing, and I had nightmares and a visual sense all the time that I was surrounded by endlessly tall, dark black walls, and I couldn't see over them, I couldn't see through them. I was just sort of lost, except for having Dorothy and Jordon. And so I went somewhat grudgingly, but with an intention to support Dorothy.
And it was very interesting because it was the summer. Compassionate Friends in Manhattan used to have, has 2 meetings a week, but in the summer they almost always have just 1 meeting, except this particular year they had the second meeting, but it was so small, there were only 5 of us there, which, and it was my birthday.
Oh my.
Can you imagine? It was-
And they tolerated our crying halfway
Right.
for half of the Compassionate Friends meeting.
Of course,
Well,
of course.
But
Yeah.
They were quite wonderful.
Now, how long has it been?
it's been 13 years, just a little over 13 years.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, that's not a long time.
Right.
Well, I just think
I mean, it sounds.
It's a long time,
something,
but
But it's
But it's
not a
short
long
But it's
time.
not a long time.
But
That's
you know,
the
it
weird
feels
part
like
about it.
yesterday. That's
Well,
that
yeah.
sometimes it feels like
wow,
yesterday,
it's
and sometimes it feels
yes.
like forever.
Yeah.
And sometimes you wake up and go, wow, this really happened to me. There's just a surrealness about it that kind of is always there.
I still talk to Russell on a regular basis, and I think we all do.
And you have a picture of him on your
Yes,
neck.
I love that.
Then we
wear,
had a picture of
wear
him
him around my
to show
neck, and then I have
on,
a
line.
pin that I got at one of the TCF
Yeah.
conferences, which
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wear
well,
to
let's
meetings.
talk
and
just a little bit about what your thoughts about men and women and grief are. David, do you feel like there's a difference?
Oh, absolutely, you do. When we started to go to Compassionate Friends, there were very, very few fathers or male siblings. The Manhattan chapter of Compassionate Friends has a siblings group, which at that time when we started was
Which we will
quite
talk
small.
to Russell
Right.
about when
Jo-
he comes.
Jordan.
I mean, excuse me, Russell. I would like to talk to Russell.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Jordan.
Jordan will talk to that. But
Yeah.
Jordan did not start with us. The siblings group was quite small until actually Jordan started to get involved, and of course he'll tell you all about that.
Yeah.
There were very few fathers, and it seemed I did my best to sort of fit in. The organization in Manhattan was run well at that time when we started. Very, very supportive of us, very comforting. And at some point, however, I became a facilitator, in fact, before Dorothy did, and found that really quite satisfying. And at some point, after Dorothy had become the chapter leader, she saw that there were enough men who were attending and said, why don't we experiment?
And do a father's group.
I love that idea.
And I had been
That's
doing
great.
facilitating for a couple of years by then.
And let me tell you, it wasn't easy to do a father's group because so many of the men came to support their
Right.
wives that they didn't feel like they needed
Yeah.
anything. So
Most-
they didn't
mo-
even
most of
want to
the men-
go to a father's group.
Yeah.
Most of the men were coming even more grudgingly than I had been in the beginning.
Right.
But after the very first fathers group,
They came back again and again.
It established itself as a permanent element in the Compassionate Friends meetings that we had.
That's great.
And even I, on a few occasions, I had to insist that we're not doing a fathers group tonight, or someone else will simply have to sit in, whether or not they're trained as a facilitator, because I'd like to be part of the group.
That makes sense.
Not the
Well,
facilitator.
we just got a second because I want Jordon to come in. But if you had one piece of advice to a guy, what would it be?
Don't let your ego or your historical vision of self get in the way of what you're feeling. Being able to talk about your child and the loss that you're feeling, the grief that you're suffering, is as much a release, I think, for men as it is for women. But men seem to have, as I did, as a self-image
Right.
that stands as a bar to being able to do that comfortably.
I love it.
Well, and I think the
And they lose
number
out
one thing
on the support that comes from it.
I think the number one thing that both of us found, and even Jordon found later when he started to come to Compassionate Friends, is that helping is healing. You know, that all of a sudden one day you turn around in Compassionate Friends and you see somebody who's so much more distraught than you are, and you just want to hug them and you want to help them. And that somehow, just by being there, helps you because you seem to be going on with your life and they don't know that they ever will. I mean, I've always said that the Compassionate Friends is the place where hope lives.
I love that. That's beautiful. Well, let's bring in Jordon.
Hey, Jordon.
Hello.
Hey. So good to see you.
And nice group hug here too.
Family hug. Jordan Ferber hug.
As long as we're going to
We have
group hug.
family hugs.
Well, Jordon, Heidi was telling me about the event you did for Keith and how fabulous it was.
You
For
mean
Keith.
The Jordan,
I mean,
The Russell Ferber Foundation
Russell.
fundraiser that we do.
Yeah.
it
yes.
was fabulous. I went
For
and
Russell.
I was a little bit hesitant to go because I was like, really, I got to go downtown. It's comedians. I don't know how good is this going to be.
Yeah.
I'm a little cynical, but I wanted to go because I wanted to support Russell, his memory and his honor. And I went down there and I was totally blown away because first of all, the comedians were amazing and incredible and some of the best I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, we're in New York, so this is.
This is it. And you're hysterical, literally. You're very funny. And then just the support and the community you have. And I know that you know, and wasn't that the school that Russell went to that you
Yes,
had
I
him
mean,
in?
I find that whole room was just filled with so
amazing.
much love.
It was amazing.
And we
Heidi
try to
said
make it
you-
uplifting, you know. We don't want to, we love Russell, we miss Russell, we want to honor Russell, but we don't want to sit there and mourn. That's not what this event is about
Exactly.
at all.
Right.
Well, you gave us permission and made it okay for people to honor Russell's memory and also to grieve through humor.
Yes.
You know, because sometimes we feel guilty. It's like, how can we laugh when someone has died? I mean, who am I if I'm laughing and my brother's dead? So you gave us that outlet. It was, I'm going to go every year. It was incredible.
We hope so.
It was great.
Heidi
Gonna
told me.
hold you to that.
She needs to go.
Heidi told me, she immediately called me and
I
said,
did.
you have to go next year.
Yes.
You have no choice.
It's the high, I mean,
It was so
I'm
good.
sure they'll agree. It's the highlight of my year.
It was
It's the
great.
highlight of their year. It really, my favorite thing about it is that it really allows us to talk about Russell around, year round, and the story doesn't end with his death.
Yeah.
The story continues. It's an uplifting event. We get to carry his name and his spirit and his whole life force on, and we get to talk about it in a way that's joyful.
Right.
And
which
you can
is-
really see what the foundation does, which is something else that I love, because we keep in touch with our scholars who we've sent to the Culinary Institute, and they come and they bake and they participate.
Yeah, and
they
we're going
come.
to show a clip of it right
And all
now,
the
and all the
food.
food.
And people might get bored, but they can't leave because dessert isn't served at the very beginning.
Dancing where the stars go blue,
Dancing where the evening fell,
dancing in your wooden shoes,
and a wedding gown,
dancing out on 7th Street, dancing through the underground,
dancing little marionette. Are
stars go blue. When the stars go blue. Laughing with your pretty mouth.
Laughing with your broken eyes.
Laughing with your lover's tongue.
In a lullaby.
Thank you all for coming.
Now, tell me again, you raise money, and what happens with it?
So we have a full 2-year scholarship in the Pastry Baking Arts program at the Culinary Institute of America up in Hyde Park, and that is through a program called CCAP, which stands for Careers in the Culinary Arts Program, and they basically they fast track kids out of high school that want to go into culinary arts and may not have the funds to do it. So they have a lot of different scholarships that they put together, and we're lucky enough to have a full 2-year scholarship that in Russell's name. So
That's
it's-
incredible.
Fantastic.
we also give money to VCS, the elementary school that we went to, where we hold the event, that has a fund
village
for
school?
Village Community School, has a fund there set up for kids who have learning differences as well.
Oh, I love it.
And we're also building an endowed scholarship at CIA ourselves, so it's pretty
That's
exciting.
amazing.
How wonderful. What a
Love it.
tribute. Now, I want to get one little side about you, though. How can people find you on your website? Because people are now going to want to know how they can see you in New York.
Yeah, well, I'm always working in New York. I'm probably not as good at updating my schedule online as I should be, but you can find all my info at JordonFerber.com. And I've been doing comedy so long that I recently switched to tragedy. And I started this podcast. I've been interviewing other comedians who have experienced tragic loss. And so I have this podcast. It's called Where's the Grief? And you can find it on iTunes or on Stitcher, or you can go directly to where'sthegrief.com and listen to it straight through the website there as well. And
Great.
that's been a really fun endeavor as well.
That's neat. Well, I've got to get to something, or Heidi will give me a hard time. And that, we've got a picture, by the way, of Russell up there.
Yes.
Chocolate, right?
I love that. That captures a personality.
All right, now Heidi's going to get after me if I don't say sibling loss.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, let me hear about it.
Okay, Jordon, what do you want to tell the world
The
about?
unacknowledged.
Yes, about
Right. Well, I think that as both of them were already talking about how it is so difficult you stand in your own way sometimes of grieving, and I think that as a sibling, there's so many people that try to tell you how you should be doing or try to dismiss what you're going through, and after a while, I think it can become one of those things where you start to believe it, and it's so
And the
important.
world doesn't really believe that siblings are
And there
suffering.
we are up there with the...
Right,
Well,
because one of the things that they always do is that, like they said to Jordon, nobody asks how he's doing. It's
Right.
always, how's your mother?
And that's why he has a workshop at Compassionate Friends
Called How's Your
How Is
Mother?
How's Your
Right.
Mother?
Which I love.
I got to tell you, was her idea.
I love it, Dorothy. It's
And it was
great
such a
idea.
good name. I had to begrudgingly use it because it was just too good not to use.
Well, I tell you, I think that one of the problems for parents who have surviving siblings is that they tend to glorify the child who's gone. I can't tell you that we used to go sit at dinner sometimes, and I used to say, okay, let's talk about all the things that Russell did that we hated, the things that drove us crazy, and there were plenty of them.
So true.
Well, but I talk in my workshops a lot about how, first of all, I don't like to compare grief. I find that
Right.
you can't really
agree.
compare it. We all lost
Yeah.
Right.
already, so there's no comparison. And I tell people in my workshop to understand. They say that when you lose your parents, you lose your past. When you lose your spouse, you lose your present. When you lose your children, you lose your future. When you lose a sibling, you lose all three of those.
Right, because we are travelers in life together. We come into this world relatively around the same time, and we expect to go out of the world together.
Right. It's the longest relationship you have in your life.
It is.
Supposedly.
80
Should
to
have.
100%
Should
of our
be.
lifetime
Right.
is supposed to be spent with our siblings.
Yeah.
Okay, now tell me this. How about taking care of your dad? Did you feel like you needed to take care of the guy in your family? Did your mother take care of you as a family?
I
How
think
did
all
it go?
three of us took care of each other in
Oh,
a
that's
sense.
good.
You know, I
We
think
held each other up, I think.
I feel really lucky that they. I don't know if it was partially because they started going to TCF as early as they did, but I don't know. I think the three of us just understood that this was not going to be a thing that was going to tear us apart, and that at the very least, the one silver lining I think that we all understood from the get-go is that we started to really appreciate what we had in our lives, and we went out of our way to let people know and to not take things for granted. And we were very vocal with each other about what it meant
And Jordon,
to
it
have
must
each other in our lives.
I love that you had each other, but it must have been really strange to all of a sudden be the only living sibling in your family. You know, not to have a brother, not to have someone to even complain about your parents with.
No, that's the hardest. That's always the hardest part. I've always said, you know, everybody believes that their own parents are crazy, but that's only because they hide it from the rest of the world. So there's nobody to. You know, I'll scream into the ether to Russell. You know, I can't believe you left me alone with these two crazy people. But I wouldn't trade them for any other crazy people. So.
And I love
We're
what you
your
do.
crazy people.
Right, exactly.
I love what you do for the sibling group, and we have a very big sibling group in Manhattan, thanks to what you're doing. And you guys are a team, and you get together outside of just, you know, meeting. You get together and have dinner and
You know,
et cetera.
it blows my mind that there aren't more sibling groups around the country. The fact that there's such a small number of TCF chapters that have an active sibling group, it blows my mind when I go to the national conference and I meet all these other siblings, and this is their only time all year to connect with other bereaved siblings. It's crazy to me. And I really, you know, I don't know how much I really had to do with making sure that it's a big group. I just make sure
How
that I'm
big
there.
is it?
I think we average, right now we have a group of about 7 or 8 that pretty much come pretty consistently. So if we have a handful of newbies, we'll have 10 or 12.
Now there's Facebook too.
And
with
there's the Facebook,
Compassionate
yep.
Friends. Facebook and
The Sounds of the Siblings.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
the Sounds of the
Got a
Siblings.
large, that's a very large group. There's over 1,000 siblings
Yes.
in there.
So for anyone out there that wants to join that group, please do. And there's also a Facebook page at the Compassionate Friends for all bereaved parents and grandparents and siblings.
They've been starting a lot of different Facebook groups.
Yes,
There's
they
one for
have.
substance abuse. There's one for
Miscarriages.
They've got about 10 or 12 new
Yep.
Facebook groups that are specifically that are closed groups, so that only the people that are in those groups will see, which is great. It's great to have a space where you can vent about stuff that isn't going to show up on your regular feed.
So Jordan, what is one of the ways that you have found hope again? I mean, what is one of the things that you've done that maybe someone out there that is newer in their grief doesn't know how they're going to survive at this point? What would you say to them?
You know, there is no blueprint. You know, there's
Yeah.
really. I always say that. You know, somebody came to our group once and it had been 12 years and she'd never dealt with it, and she was worried that she had waited too long. I said, no, perfect timing. You know, you're here. This is
There you go.
the hardest part is I don't know, the hardest part never goes away. You know, you just want him back. So I think that similar to what they were saying is that the most important thing for me has been talking about it, being able to give my feelings validity and having other people understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I started the podcast is that it's very hard to talk about grief. Nobody wants to talk about it with you. And so as eventually you start to repress how you feel sometimes. And so it's so important to be able to give your feelings voice so that you're not standing in the way of dealing with the feelings, you know?
Now, can people, if I wanted to be on your podcast and I live in California, can I call you and be on it, or do you have people just come into your studio?
Well, I mean, I'm still kind of early in the process. I'm about to put out the 15th episode. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but I put out 2 a month.
Okay.
I have yet to do one over the phone, but I have the capability.
Okay.
I could do a Skype interview. It's an audio only format, so all of the ones that I've done so far have been face to face. But I have the capability.
Yeah, we listened to a couple of yours that they were great. So, as a family, what would you say to families out there? David, do you want to start? What would you say to a family out there about the family?
Look to your family members. I say that with a degree of luxury because we had a very close family before we lost Russell, and it was like a 4-wheeled wagon, and one of the wheels fell off. To put it into
That makes sense.
maybe silly and simple terms,
like that.
and we had to struggle to figure out how to keep that wagon rolling along the road with just 3 wheels.
Right.
In our case, we became even closer together. We've all read about how families fall apart, marriages end. Marriages are destroyed by when a child dies. Quite the opposite occurred with us. We leaned on each other more. We became much closer as a family. All, not just Dorothy and I, but Jordon as well. We were never helicopter parents, but we were always quite close with our kids. And maybe we become more helicopter parents, in fact, since then.
That's what
Jordan's
I
a
was-
grown
that's
man.
What I was going to
But-
say is that one of the things that
We get strength from each other.
we had the need to hear from Jordon every day. Well,
Yeah.
Jordon was 24 years old. To have to call his parents every day was
Right.
just not something.
It didn't help that I was living with them as well.
Well, at that point you were living
Hi,
with
Mom
us,
and
right?
Dad, I'm downstairs. Things are going well.
Exactly.
I'm in the kitchen.
Well, I think we learned to respect each other's grief.
Yeah.
You know, there were times when we needed to be alone. David would sit and cry every morning and look at Russell's pictures. If I came in that room when he was doing it, we would have an argument, and we never argued really. So it got to me that I was just stepping on his grief, and you just have to learn those moments
I
and step
found
aside
I
from
found
them.
that you get up in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm going to make it today early on, and then your spouse or your kids are down, and you're like, no, you can't be down. I'm working so hard to keep up today.
Listen,
So
I
it's
spent
hard.
my life as a travel writer, and when Russell died for 2 years, I went to the office pretty much every day. I never finished an article. I just couldn't do it.
Wow, yeah. Well, Heidi, what a fantastic family, and
Yeah.
what a great show it's been today. I mean, we could just go on and on with you guys. So helpful.
Definitely. I love this guy and love his parents, and I love what you guys are doing with the foundation, and you're just changing so many lives, and I feel like Russell is doing as much in his death as he did in his life to change the world and change people's lives, so thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank you for
being
having
on
us.
today.
Yeah.
We're
It's
making
been
lemonade,
great.
David, as David said.
Exactly.
And we should also mention, if you want to learn more about our foundation, it's the Russell Ferber Foundation.org.
Right.
And we do our benefit every year in the last week of June
Okay.
in the
And
West
please
Village.
go. You
Please
will
go.
not regret it, I promise.
And thanks for watching our show today, and God bless, and take care of yourself. And Heidi, I always want to remind you, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own.